not really sure what he was trying to do with that.
Hello and welcome to the F1 Weekend Debrief. Well, here in Formula One's Media and Technology Centre, the place was buzzing on the weekend, following every team radio message and every camera angle from a thrilling Brazilian Grand Prix. Rob, as it turned out, with Verstappen, Gasly and Sainz, the youngest Formula One podium ever.
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was a great race. It was brilliant for Formula One. It was good to see all them young guys up there. All of them either current or ex Red Bull Junior Program drivers, which is really good for that as well. And it was great to see Pierre Gasly up there. You know, he's had a really tough season, and this is a good fillip for him.
All right, let's get into the details of it, shall we? Roll VT. Well, I suppose we shouldn't be surprised, Rob. With both championships done and dusted, it was really win or bust for Mercedes and Ferrari. It was certainly bust for Ferrari, and it wasn't a win for Mercedes as well. And in came Max Verstappen with Red Bull. Why do they get it so right? How do Red Bull consistently get it right at Brazil?
You know, Sector 1, Sector 2, they're both very high downforce sectors. So you need a lot of downforce, and we know historically and even now, even with the small changes that they've made for the car this year, that Red Bull philosophy is always to have a lot of downforce, so it's always going to go very well there. And you know that Honda is helping them as well. The Honda has certainly made great strides this year. It's not a particularly power-sensitive circuit in Interlagos, so you don't need the best engine there. But if you've got a reasonable engine with a lot of downforce, you'll go well.
And does the Honda particularly have a lot of grunt low down to help with traction, or is that a characteristic of its engine, or is it just as good as everybody else?
No, I think it's probably as drivable as everybody else's now. You know, they suffered with drivability back in the early days when they first came in, especially with McLaren. But you know, they seem to have sorted that out between the two of them now. And that Red Bull has very, very good traction because it has a lot of CLR or rearward downforce on corner exit, which helps it to have good traction.
Oh, I like that. CLR. What does that sound for?
It's coefficient of lift rear.
Oh, cool. Okay, rear downforce.
Rear downforce.
All right, good. What about Max Verstappen then? He was well motivated to do very well here after being taken out by Esteban Ocon last year. And is it because it's like a giant kart track, Interlagos, really, isn't it? And he started in karting. He just loves it.
Yeah, I think that's maybe a bit of an oversimplification. But you know, it is a tight and twisty track. I think that Red Bull car, it has an incredibly good rear end. You know, front end. You need a really good front end in that middle sector to get the car pointed, to get the car turned, and then you need good traction. And that Red Bull certainly got that. And Max likes that tight, twisty type of corner as well. That if you've got a circuit like that, he always excels. Okay,
well, it almost was last year repeating itself again when Robert Kubica came out of the garage from his pit stop and almost took out the race leader at the time, Max Verstappen. Now, if we see it from Kubica's onboard camera, then I can understand. I mean, I thought at the time it was a little bit late, but he wasn't. He gets the green light, almost puts him in the wall.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you know, it's my old team and everything, but this was a little bit sloppy from Williams. They've released the car into traffic there. You know, it's fair enough what they've done in releasing the car, but he definitely needed a message there. He definitely needed somebody shouting down his ear that he was being released into traffic so that he would have given Max some room.
Okay, all right. Well, he emerged from that unscathed of Max Verstappen. Of course, then he went on to fight Lewis Hamilton. It was a nice, clean fight, which is not like we've always had between the two, but signs of things to come, and it was great stuff.
Yeah, it was a brilliant race, you know, and I thought personally that Lewis was perhaps a little bit resigned at times. You know, Max had the slightly faster car. You know, you never want to give up on Lewis, but if the championship was still open, I don't know whether he'd have fought a little bit harder some of those moves.
Okay, well, maybe not, but we'll see about Lewis a bit later on, what he was struggling with. But Alex Albon possibly could have made it 2 Red Bull Racing Hondas on the podium had he not had this clash with Hamilton at the end, and that was really unfortunate because it was a good drive, a solid drive from Albon, and it would have been his first podium. Didn't really deserve this, but he did leave the door open.
He's left the door open. There's a couple of lines through there, turn 9, turn 10, and you know Lewis, he knows he's in the wrong. He's just got he's put his car in a place where it shouldn't be at that point. He should have left more room or backed out of it a lot earlier. You know, it was Alex's corner. He was way in front from the very initial braking.
All right, well, with Albon out of the picture and Hamilton eventually getting a penalty, it's Pierre Gasly, another ex-Red Bull Racing factory driver who actually got the second place. And how impressed have you been with that? Because Gasly could have looked at, you know, Albon was confirmed for next year in Gasly's old seat, and he could have let his head drop, but actually it seemed to motivate him.
I think he's coming back, and he's just more and more motivated as the season's gone on. You know, he obviously had that devastating start to the season, and then you know the killer blow that he kind of gets demoted, if you like, back to the feeder team in Toro Rosso. But he's making it work for him, and that's a sign of a really great driver. You know, and I hope that he can, because he's clearly got the speed. He's clearly got the talent. He definitely deserves that seat in Toro Rosso, and it'd be nice just to see him go from strength to strength and come back to the driver that we all expected him to be at the start of this year.
He's got all of that, and he's got the nerve as well. Take a look at him duking it out side by side with Lewis Hamilton out of the last corner down the straight to actually make sure he got that last position. And well, not only does that Toro Rosso Honda have some grunt holding off a Mercedes, but Gasly's got the nerve to make it stick.
Yeah, you know, there's not a lot of nerve for these boys in that situation. It's just keeping the foot hard down and seeing who's going to drag it out to the line.
So here we go, approaching the last corner.
Yeah, I mean, definitely what happens is he seems to get good traction as well. Lewis, you know, gets a tighter line through there to try to get up the inside, and Pierre just is on the black rubbered part of the track,
right? And
he has good traction. But then you can see, I think you're right, that you know, whatever happens, whether or not, you know, they're fully deploying all of the energy system, all of the kinetic energy system on the Mercedes or not at that point, I'm not sure. But certainly that Honda and Red Bull combination was slippery enough in a straight line to keep that second position.
Well, it was probably a good thing for the Mercedes garage desk that Toto Wolff took his first race off in about 6 years, leaving James Allison in charge, because Mercedes made a bit of heavy weather of the race, and who knows, maybe Toto Wolff was banging his coffee table at home, and Lewis Hamilton was similarly frustrated, trying the undercut with Max Verstappen, as we've already established, and then it was a bit of a frantic radio message about not getting full power afterwards.
Guys, give me the information when my battery's dead.
Right, well, let's unpick that, Rob. What's going on? Why is Hamilton wanting to know what's happening with the battery? As Mercedes tell us, he used full battery deployment on his outlap to try and undercut Verstappen.
You've got the newer tyres on, as the other driver's completing his in-lap, as Verstappen was. Lewis has got the new tyres, and they give him an extra advantage by deploying, you know, all the permissible energy via the MG UK, just to get the maximum or minimise the lap time, to get the best lap time. What that leaves him then is so they do the job and he comes out in front, but it leaves him then vulnerable to attack the very next lap, which is exactly what happened. Max came back at him. He didn't have you know, sufficient energy in the energy store within the battery itself, which meant that he could deploy so far up the hill, but not all the way up the hill. And when his battery ran out, Max came past.
Okay, there's no way around that, really. If you're going to deplete your battery, there's no magic way of it charging up.
No.
How long would it take? A lap to recharge it or something like that?
It depends on how much you're deploying during those laps. So it's just an energy balance. You know, if you wanted to stop deploying altogether and your lap times would come down by a second or two, you could harvest and you could build everything back up. But at that point, you're very, very slow on the straight. So it's a balancing act that the teams and the engineers have to play all the time.
Okay, well, Mercedes' race didn't get much better a bit later on, because the race turned on an oil leak from Valtteri Bottas's engine that shut off the Mercedes, and he came to a sort of rolling stop. But the FIA then decided, a lap later, Bottas stopped, it actually necessitated a safety car. Now, Was race director Michael Massey right in doing this?
100%. 100% he was
Why?
right. I mean, they had to bring. So I think what happens is that Valtteri's car gets kind of beached on the escape road. So he parked it in a reasonably nice position, but it was beached, and then, as we're seeing here, and they couldn't then pull it back. So what they've had to do is momentarily they've had to bring a crane onto the circuit. And once a crane's on the circuit, then it calls for a full course yellow. You know, if we go back to the tragedy of 2014 in Japan, what happened to Jules and that tractor on the circuit, you know, there's no way that we can ever take risks again. So they were quite right. They threw a full course yellow in order that the tractor could get onto the track and pull the car into a safe position. And at that point, all the cars have to be slowed down under the safety car.
All right, well, it was a safety car, and Mercedes told Lewis Hamilton to do the opposite of Max Verstappen. That meant, firstly, was that the right call?
Yes, it was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because you give him a shot at the lead, you know, regardless of tyre situation and all the rest of it, tyre age. You know, Lewis had already, he'd had his crack at Max. Max had proved too much for him, so he probably was never going to pass him on track. They had reasonably equal tyres at that point. The right thing to do was to leave him out and see if they could, you know, at least give him a shot at the lead.
Okay, well, having been left out then, Lewis Hamilton towards the end of the race, when the second safety car came out for the Ferraris clashing and leaving debris all over the track, meant that perhaps he was predisposed to pit, being on old tyres. Well, that's certainly what it sounded like on this team radio message.
So let us know if you want tyres. Let us know if you want tyres. You will lose 1 place. 5 laps to go.
Wow, you made the decision. I mean,
We
I'm coming
think
for
we
I'm coming in. I'm coming in.
Okay, copy. We're ready. So obviously Lewis needs a correction there. It's 2 cars that we need to pass to get back to that original position. Apologies for that.
No. It's a car ahead of me. That's racing.
A firm, that's Gasly.
Well, a couple of things from that. First of all, do you think it's funny he sees a Toro Rosso in front of him? He thinks, hang on, am I properly racing him? So, yeah, you are.
Yeah, he thought it was a lapped car, didn't he? You could tell by that radio message that he thought that was a lapped car. You know, we talked about it being predisposed that he had to pit there. I don't think he had to pit. You know, Mercedes have already come out and said that they thought that was an error on their part.
Yeah, but to leave it to Lewis, and I'm thinking he might have been predisposed because he was on old tyres. He thought, oh, it's a safety car, I might as well pit. But he might not have computed when he said 5 laps to go, well, hang on, it's going to take them 3 laps to get the safety car procedure out of the way. I'll only have 2 laps to do to try and make up those positions again.
No, of course he wouldn't. And I think, to be fair, I'm sure Mercedes are looking back and thinking that they should have made that decision for him. You know, you want to involve the driver in decisions at times, but you've got to make, there's certain decisions that you've got to make for them because you have so much more information at hand. You know, with hindsight, it was probably the better thing to do just to stay out.
Now to Ferrari, and Rob, it seems a few races since Mattia Binotto must have read the riot act to Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc, but I guess they must have forgotten because they came together and for the first time this season took each other out. I don't know, has this one been coming since Monza?
Well, it may have been coming since Monza, but there's more of it coming, I think, between these two. They're 2 very, very, you know, great drivers. One in the making and one with all the medals nearly all the medals that you can possibly get. This was just, it's the cardinal sin, to be honest, and I don't suppose that Ferrari will be. I've jumped to too many conclusions over that. I think they'll let things cool down and then probably they're going to talk to them both back at the factory and see what the outcome is.
It was quite a light tap. I mean, this we have to have a look at the 360-degree cameras. But I don't know. I'm kind of thinking Sebastian doesn't know where the back of his car is because he re-overtakes Leclerc and then kind of doesn't realise that you need a bit more space before you try and move across a bit. Yeah,
so you're coming around turn 3 here and you see on Charles's right Sebastian come across, but then he just closes in on him. It was, if anything, Sebastian, if you look at the external camera, if anything, Sebastian is just tending to drift a little bit to his left, and his rear axle collects Charles's front, and that's kind of the end of it. Charles doesn't move, if you like. That's his prerogative to do so. But your two teammates, racing for the biggest, most important team in Grand Prix history. Yeah. You've got a duty of care to that team, and any teammates have to give each other, that extra 200-300 mil.
So might Seb have thought, oh well, I've already got this move done, I can now move across and shut him off to stop him trying to come back at me in the corner, but he didn't realise that Leclerc was still there? Or was he just sort of a bit absent-mindedly drifting left?
I don't know what was going on through his head. You'd have to ask Sebastian that. He's best placed to answer that question. But he probably, with hindsight, and I'm sure he sees it as well, he would have been better. He was completing the pass and he had the momentum to get past. He probably just wanted to close Charles off a little bit. Yeah. With hindsight, he was better just staying on that right-hand side of the road.
Well, the whole thing was largely unnecessary because Leclerc on much fresher tyres, having pitted under the safety car, whereas they left Sebastian out, probably would have got Vettel in the end anyway. But that didn't stop Vettel on the team radio being pretty vocal about it in 2 languages.
I'm a puncture. What the hell is he doing? Sorry. Puncture. Mein Gott, muss das sein! Ein Punkt, Mr. Bau!
Well, as any of you German speakers out there know, that's effectively, my gosh, was that really necessary? From Sebastian. Well, yeah, I don't know. Was it really necessary? Ultimately, Seb, no, it wasn't necessary. Is this a bit like Turkey 2010?
It's not entirely dissimilar if you watch that, the replay of that accident. There's a few similarities, but different era, different time, and all the rest of it. I'm sure that the biggest issue going through both Sebastian and Charles's head and the team's head, Mattia, is how they're going to resolve this going forward. All
right then, if you were Mattia Binotto or his special advisor, how would you resolve this going forward?
There can be no resolution other than you must never ever do that again. You've got to stay away from each other, and if they need to put special dispensation in place or whatever within the team, then you need to do that. It's the number one cardinal sin that the racing drivers can do, is to take each other out.
I mean, possibly just as well that they're not in the championship anymore. They can get all this nonsense sorted out to make sure they don't do it next year when hopefully for them they will be in the championship.
Yeah, and this is a race which is okay. I think it's for second or third in the drivers. No, third in the Drivers' World Championship, isn't it? Which they're all still battling over at the minute. But we've got to get the situation under control, because if what about the point where they're battling for first and second? The stakes are much higher, and therefore the ramifications are much higher. They need to get it under control.
Now, at this point, we normally do good day, bad day, but because it was such a good day for Carlos Sainz getting his first podium, we've decided to devote the whole section to him. Unfortunately, Rob, for him, he wasn't on the actual podium. This one was mocked up much later in the afternoon with his old McLaren team. And while I suppose that's all very nice, should the stewards have just made an instant decision on Lewis Hamilton clonking into Alex Albon to give Sainz his moment on the podium?
Lewis drove into the side of Alex's car, there was no doubt. I hear that he didn't even go and try and defend himself.
No, he said fair cop.
So it was, yeah, we could have just had a 5-second penalty at the end of the race, just added on. Anyway, there you go.
All right, well, pleased for him, because it was a great drive, lots of overtakes as well. How did he do it?
I think Carlos is a really good driver, and he's a nice lad as well. He works really hard with the team, and he lives and breathes Formula One. So it's really good to see him getting up there. He did one less stop than everybody else, and he made it work. He did a one stop, and that was the right thing to do from where he was. Started on the soft, did an incredibly long stint, and made that tyre really work for him. And doing that one less stop has given him a lot of time back in the advantage over everybody else. So he's done a fantastic job.
Okay, the wait at the end was that McLaren wanted to confirm that Sainz wasn't going to get done for a DRS infringement under a waved yellow flag. Just quickly, what's that about when the waved yellow flag comes out?
Well, when there's a yellow flag section, you're not allowed to use the DRS.
Right.
So the DRS is disabled at that point, and you're not allowed to use it. But if for example, Carlos was in the middle of using it, and then the DRS, the yellow flag section was in halfway down the DRS section, then he should have turned it off, and apparently he did. You know, the stewards hadn't given anything, so he did turn it off.
No, he did. It was all fine. And that means, as we can see here, McLaren have cemented 4th place in the Constructors' Championship. They've got 140 points. Renault behind them on 91, so it's impossible for Renault to overtake them, even if they finish 1-2 at the next race, the final race in Abu Dhabi. We can't ignore the great result from Alfa Romeo Sauber, who scored a stonking 22 points in Brazil. 22 points in one race for 4th for Kimi Raikkonen and 5th for Antonio Giovinazzi. How did they do this?
Well, Kimi, I think, started 9th and then kind of just sat there and let all the attrition go on in front of him, like he does now as the elder statesman of Formula 1. He's always been very good at that, in fact. You know, just letting the maelstrom happen in front of him, and he just picks up the points and he arrived there. Probably a little bit more impressive was Giovinazzi's drive, because he only qualified 13th but still managed to finish right behind Kimi. So it's been a good result for the team. The car was obviously very strong in the race. It's been a good result for them, and certainly a good track. And it's good to see them, you know, back on the front foot, because I think they've had a few races where, you know, perhaps they've been in the doldrums and not really moving forward. So it's good if they can have, you know, they've had a good race in Brazil. If they can have another good one in Abu Dhabi, then that's bearing well for 2020.
Well, Daniel Ricciardo made amends for an early drift into Kevin Magnussen, an accident on lap 8, with 6th in the end. A good recovery drive, but how did this happen? Sort of understeers into him?
Yeah, he gets it up on the curb, as you're going to see now. He gets up on the inside curb and just locks it up. Yeah. And that just pushes him wide. He just, you know, the front's not there for him, and he understeers into poor Kevin. Okay,
and it was a good day also for Sergio Perez, who managed to finish 9th, and a couple of points for Racing Point, but they can now feel the heat of Alfa Romeo Sauber on their shoulders, because they're coming up. Alfa Romeo 57, Racing Point 67.
Yeah, it is. I mean, 10 points. I know we've just seen Alfa score 22 points in Brazil. 10 points is a lot of points to score in Abu Dhabi, but it's certainly not impossible. Don't rule it out.
Yep. Okay. Well, all of those placings, the final Constructors' Standings Championship, will be decided at the next race in the United Arab Emirates.
The duel in the desert, a most magnificent setting.
A big crash. Sebastian, you are the world champion! Get in there, Lewis.
Yeah, the last race of the 2019 season, Yas Marina, Abu Dhabi. What kind of circuit is it?
You can have processional races there, but you can also have some really good races there.
We've had good races in the past.
And I think that it's one of those, you know, the circuit changes towards the end of the race as the temperature comes down and the track temperature falls, and that can, you know, quite often lead to different gambles with softer compounds and stuff like that. I quite like it. You know, it's quite a technical circuit for the drivers. I think that Red Bull have a great chance there again, and they're building on the back of the momentum from this win, and just a generally strong second half of the season.
All right, brilliant. We'll look forward to that. But that's checkered flag from us. Rob Smedley, thank you very much for your insight. And, well, after the barnstorming Bulls were brilliant in Brazil, who dares wins in the desert of Abu Dhabi? Join us after that race to find out. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.